This is just another podcast with Just Heck for everyone that's out there listening. I hope you enjoy it and it becomes a learning experience. Para todas las personas en República Dominicana y otros países, esto es un podcast de Just Heck. Espero que lo disfruten algo de esto.
Ooh, that was it right there. That was it. Good day, good afternoon. This is Just Heck introducing David Garcia on Just Another Podcast. It's not just another podcast, but it's just another podcast. All right. Again, we got my guy, David Garcia, hailing from Santo Domingo. All right. That's the capital of the Dominican Republic, for those who don't know. And today, David has graced us with his presence to share his story. And I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys, get whatever you can from it. This is a man who has gone through many trials and tribulations in his life, and he's made it. He's in a good place in his life, and it's just showing you that when you think things may be down, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. So, David, how you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. I woke up pretty early, and I'm just going to the ins and outs of today.
All right, good. All right, I'm trying to refrain from calling you Theo. But for those that don't know, this is my uncle. Although when you see the YouTube version, you will definitely tell that we are related. My good friend from Old Headley Fitness, David asked me if I was having Pedro Martinez on the podcast. I said, no. I said, no, it's not Pedro Martinez. It's David Garcia. He goes, okay, cool. Because he goes, man, that guy looks like Pedro Martinez. I was like, oh.
Coincidentally, I used to teach baseball players English here in Dominican Republic. And if you notice this T-shirt.
Yeah, definitely. I see it.
They gave me this, and some of them actually thought that I was either Pedro Martinez or his twin. So it's not new to me.
That is awesome. That's awesome. I want to get into that later because that is really dope. Okay. I didn't even know that. Wow, you're teaching English to future MLB players?
Yes.
Wow, yes. That is dope. Okay. So, David, I always start with this question with my guests. So who is David Garcia?
David Garcia is learned a lot from life. I've learned to appreciate it, and I've become better understanding and better aware of not only who I am, but what life is about. I have been thrown bricks, stones, flowers, everything. And I've been able to learn from those experiences. I've been able to not only appreciate it, but also help others achieve better recognition of themselves and their surroundings in order to enable them to become better persons. Not that I have achieved everything in life, but I can say that I'm here now because of those experiences that I've had.
Awesome, definitely a man of perseverance, So let's go back, right? So David Garcia, was he born on U.S. soil or was he born in DR?
I was born here in Santo Domingo. My father was from Santiago. My mother was from a place called San Cristobal here. And I was born here, and at the age of 5, when I was 5 years old, they decided that we should go to the United States. My father had left first, then my mother. And in that, we went to the U.S., and I grew up in the U.S. I consider myself more American than Dominican because I went from everywhere, from kindergarten all the way up to the university. So I've had that long trajectory over there. Right. So, here, this is more of a still foreign culture to me.
Wow. So you say that you came to the U.S. when you were 5 years old, right?
Yes.
But are there any siblings?
Yes. I have 3 sisters from my mother and father's side, and I also have brothers and sisters from my father's side. My brother Hector, your father, my sister Dulce Maria, and my brother Pedrito. Those are the ones that I know. But what I've learned over the years, there are others that are my brothers that I don't know from my father's side.
I can't speak on you because I only know you to have one child, but a lot of the Dominican men that I've known in my life have several.
Oh, yes.
Seriously, it's at least between 4 and 7, 4 and 8. It's always a lot of kids.
Oh, yes.
And so, they Dominican men definitely know how to populate. Telling you. So you guys moved. Where did you first land? Where did you first move to when you got to the U.S.?
Well, when we first got to the U.S., we lived down by Columbus Avenue, down by 107th. There was a school I remember called, I believe it was Booker T. Washington, and we lived right across from that school.
Wow.
It was pretty nice. It was decent until, few events occurred.
Okay. What events were those?
And I'm talking about back in 67, 68. We were a growing population. Dominicans were a growing population, especially down by Columbus Avenue. And we did not take, what I mean by that, there was always there was always a lot of things going around, especially at that time. Of course, there were a lot of drugs going around. A lot of things were happening. It was a heated moment. My father was the super of a building, of the building where we lived at. And I recall one day, my brother Pedrito, who was the oldest, he said, listen, you gotta come down, you gotta see this. And he was very hyped, and he was like kind of scared. We didn't know what was happening. I was the youngest, so I was just curious. I said, what the heck is going on?
Wow.
And we all ran downstairs to the basement, and right on the bottom of the stairs of the basement, there was this man laying there. What I saw was just laying there. I noticed that he had holes all over him, and blood was all over the place. Later on was when I, came to the conclusion that the man had been murdered down there.
Wow.
But I do recall my father immediately saying, we're getting out of here. Yes, we're getting out of here. Because it was a very dangerous neighborhood at that time.
Right.
I believe it was about 2 weeks after that what is called today, or what was known back then as Washington Heights, which is 153rd between Broadway and Amsterdam.
Right, definitely. I consider that Washington Heights, by the way, but I consider Washington Heights to start at 135th and Broadway. Yes. And then it goes all the way up to like the 200s or whatever. But, it is what it is. So you moved to 153rd right? 153rd between Broadway and Amsterdam,
Broadway
right?
and Amsterdam. Yes.
Wow, yeah. That's still in the family, by the way. That apartment's still
Yes. As a matter of fact, family still live there to this day.
Definitely.
And I had a great time as a kid there because there's a cemetery right across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to play there all the time and so forth. But to me, later on, I saw it as very interesting because there were a number of different religious churches in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
All the way down from the corner from Amsterdam, we had, I think it was a Baptist Methodist church. Then right next to it was a Roman Catholic church. You will go further up the street and going like towards Broadway, and then you have a Jewish synagogue. And right before you get to the corner on Broadway, there was a Chinese church. I say Chinese because that was where Chinese used to practice their religion.
Right.
So there was a diverse amount of culture and people in that block, I would say.
Right.
And we would come in contact with a lot of Jewish people because the synagogue was right next to the buildings where we lived at. And I would say it was kind of like a semi-affluent neighborhood because the Black Methodist Church, Catholic Church, and then, you had these other two churches, the synagogue and Chinese church. So there was always a mixture of people in that neighborhood. Quite interesting.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Especially when you come from DR and all you've known is Dominicans and you moved to... At the time, Columbus, was that mostly Dominican? Wasn't there a Puerto Rican community there too, to some extent? And
yes, there was. As a matter of fact, at that time, the Puerto Rican community was bigger than the Dominican community. Mm-hmm. And it was primarily dominated, the Hispanic, we were also called or known as Puerto Ricans.
Right.
Derogatively, we were also called Spics, which is not nice at all. Mm. But yes, we did become identified as Dominicans as the population of Dominicans started growing, especially in Washington Heights.
Definitely.
We were one of the first family, if not the first family, around that neighborhood.
Wow.
Because we found no other Dominicans there until a few years later. So we had our struggles with Puerto Rican families, with Black families, because we were trying to fit in to this mixture of people within that neighborhood.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, you definitely earned their respect. We'll get into that. You definitely. I've had plenty of people walk up to me, be like, "You got family on 153rd?" Like, maybe. Like, they're like, "Nah, you Garcia?" Like, yeah. It's like, "Yo, I knew your aunt. Or I knew your uncle. I knew whoever." And I'm like, okay, they're like, "Yeah, man, nah, those are good people. Those good people." So I don't know what y'all did to them, but they killed them with kindness.
Yes, because one of the things is that my father was very strict.
Okay.
He was very disciplined, and my mother was the one who shared kindness and spread that kindness amongst our neighbors. So we were well liked. I can say that much. We were very well liked and respected as well.
Definitely. So there was 6 siblings so it's seven children altogether, right?
Yes.
So what was that like? What was that household like?
Well, from my perspective, it was fun. Because I'm the youngest one, so I was able to get away with a lot of things. I was a bit rebellious. Yeah. I was always into something. But unfortunately, with me, what happened was that I became very ill, and I needed a series of surgeries on my left ear due to infections and tumors and so forth.
Wow. So
all of that mischievousness kind of like left me because I was always sick in the hospital. Something was always going on with me. But I could imagine that for my father, it must have been pretty rough. Having to take care of 7 children, himself, his wife, and maintain a household was not an easy task. Me and Hector, we were in charge of helping him maintain the building because my father was the super of 3 buildings. And aside from that, he had a separate job. So we were like, me and Hector were the ones who upkept the cleanliness of the building and the functionality while he was out there still earning a living.
Right.
So it was pretty congested, but we were able to make it along.
Okay, awesome. So who in the household growing up before your teenage years, who was like the boss of all the kids, of all the children in the house? Who was like the person that made the rules when your mother and father?
Between siblings, I would say it was Maritza. Because the first one to leave was Pedrito. He was the oldest. He had to get his own place.
Gotcha.
Dulce was the next one to leave. And then it was just then us. So after Dulce left, it was Maritza who actually took the lead. But then Hector also took a bit of a lead as well because he said, well, why do I have to follow what the girls say?
Right.
So, he was my go-to guy. He was like my role model because I had to follow his lead,
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So I know I've asked you this question before. I just want to do it on the air. So who was the smartest of the siblings?
Without a doubt, I would say was Raquel.
Okay.
Raquel, she had a knack for doing things. She was more, I would say, focused on things, and she was more projected to getting things done.
Okay.
And over the years, she was the one who would get the best employments. Okay. She would really get things done. She was the it person when it came to being the smartest, I would say. Okay. And to this day, I still hold that high regard for her. Okay.
You okay, sure. I don't know if I share that same sentiment, but she's definitely smart.
Who would you say?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on what you gauge as smart. I always thought, well, I didn't really know Christina too well. Knowing you and how your life turned out, you're a professor, and we'll get to that later, but it may have been you. I think Raquel was smart in certain things. I thought your brother Hector could have been really smart had he stayed focused. It was a lot. I've witnessed a lot of different things from him growing up, but it's hard. Talent alone doesn't get you anywhere. Hard work has to accompany that. So,
and I agree with you there. Hector was very intelligent. Unfortunately, he got sidetracked, and that led him to other things because whatever he applied himself to, he was very good at.
Yeah.
He was very good at basketball. I'm talking about he was a heck of a basketball player. Yeah. I admired him. I took after him in terms of basketball. Dancing, he was a phenomenal dancer. Right. I think I share that with you. He was one of the best dancers in New York at certain points in his life. He was number one. I'm talking about all New York. So, he had his ways, but unfortunately, life has something else for him.
Definitely. And so, so there was you, Maritza, Christina, Raquel, and Hector. So it was the four of you guys, right? I know that at some point, there was, tragedy kind of struck you guys. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, well, we were a close-knit family. It was based largely on my mother's efforts and the way she held us as a cohesive family. She was the knot that tied us all together. Unfortunately, back in 1976, God had other plans, and He stripped us of her love. And that was very hard for all of us because I recall winter was coming up, and Marixa and Pedrito had gone over to visit, and they were joking with Mom, and Marixa would tell her, oh, when I have my grandkids, when I have your grandkids, I'm going to bring them over. You're going to take care of them. And my mother was joking, saying, no, that she's not going to do that, and so forth. And it was a very pleasant time because Christmas was coming up and everything. So we had these good expectations. Unfortunately, on December 15th of that year, my mother was walking out the door. I was the last one to see her, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because I would never wake up early to go to school or anything. But that morning, something woke me up, and I stood up, we talked, and she prepared breakfast for me, and I was the last one to see her alive. And that was something that really hit me hard. It hit all of us hard, but I was Mama's boy. I was the only boy that she had.
Right.
I was the youngest one. I was always the sick one. So you could imagine how close my mother held on to me. And I don't doubt that the others were as affected as I was, but we were all devastated by her loss.
Definitely. That would. So when she passed away, obviously there was some emotional impact. What was some of the other impacts that occurred upon her death?
Well, my father, I believe it was early December or late November, early December, when he had already started giving my mother the documents of the apartment and that, because he wanted to leave. He was looking towards divorcing her.
Wow.
And what had happened was that by her passing, he decided, well, hey, listen, let me stay. So he stayed, and we all thought that, okay, she passed, he's our father, he's going to stay, we're going to be guided and everything. But it was all for something other than what we expected.
Right.
We came to the Dominican Republic, we buried her and everything. We had all the los nueve rezos, as they say, the prayers. And when we went back to the States, he simply took everything, his belongings, and he left. He cut out.
Wow.
We were like, where's Dad?
How old were you guys when he did that?
I was 14 at the time.
Wow.
Hector, I believe he had just turned 16.
Wow.
Christina, I think she was probably about 18, then Rico 19, and Rick's 20. I'm not sure about the ages, but we were right along that line.
Guys were teenagers.
Yes. So my father had cut out. Hector decided early from then on that he was not going to stay because Hector had already started living his own life, going his way.
Right.
So it was just me and my three sisters. So we were just trying to make it, hoping that something would happen because Marissa was not working, neither was Raquel. Right. And Christina and me, we were still, I believe, in the minor phases of our lives. So it was kind of difficult. Luckily we had neighbors who helped us out along the way. And my father would come once in a blue moon and say, hey, where's the food? Where's dinner? Did you guys cook? And we would look at him like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? There's nothing here. I remember one evening, a neighbor came and she gave us, there was an apple. I don't know if Marissa had gotten it or Raquel, whoever, but we split that apple in four. And like I'm telling you now, I remember it as if it were right now. I ate a quarter of an apple. It was sliced in four. That filled me up. Wow. That night, I slept comfortably because that piece of apple filled me up, literally.
Wow.
And that's how difficult it was. It was very difficult. So, there was all of this mixed emotions and all of these expectations that we had, and nothing came about, nothing materialized. Lo and behold, came to find out later on, my father had us there because he was taking out my mother's money from the banks, from the various banks where she had accounts, just so he can go and live his life, because he didn't care about anything else, unfortunately.
Wow.
So I don't think I have to explain the mixed bag of emotions that were running through us at that particular time in our lives.
Okay. So, man, that's deep. That's deep. Like I told you before, I didn't really know him. I just met him when he was older and he was fragile. We met and he criticized me about not knowing Spanish. And I just looked at him. I said, okay, like, I don't know what to tell you. He said something about me being like my father. And I just looked at him. I said, okay, whatever. I was like, sure. Yeah.
I'll share this bit with you, which I've hardly ever shared with anybody. Later on, throughout the years, especially when I was out in the streets, I was doing a whole number of things.
Right.
And I got to hate my father to the point where I had literally said that if I would see him, I was going to murder him. I literally said that. And I was walking around strapped.
Right.
And if I would have seen him, that would have been it for him.
Wow.
And I didn't care about what would have consequences.
Right.
Because there was so much hatred, so much frustration, so much stress, so much tension that will build up over the years. That's how I felt for him.
Wow.
Lucky, me and him, we never bumped into it.
Yeah,
lucky for him, lucky for me.
Lucky for him, definitely.
but then, later on, when I came down to DR, and I'm moving ahead, I realized through looking at myself and doing a lot of soul searching, and I questioned as to why was he like that? What made him become this person?
Right.
And I did a little investigation as to who he was and what was he about. And I learned a lot of tragic things about him in his childhood.
Gotcha.
And I winded up forgiving him for all of that he had caused us. But of course, nothing is ever the same.
Of course not.
Because the last time I did speak with him, I winded up hanging the phone up on him.
Right.
Because he was very egocentric. It was all about him. This house where I'm at right now was due to my mother's efforts. He used to beat my mother so she wouldn't buy this house. Literally beat her.
Wow.
Because he wanted the money. And just to think about that he had did all of this, and I found this out when I was here. After I had forgiven him and everything, right. I found out here what he had done to her with respect to the house.
Right.
So he called me one evening and he told me, that I gotta besarle la mano or kiss his hand. Oh, bendición, papi, I told him, no, I'm not telling you anything like that. I told you years ago that me and you, we dead.
Right. Yeah.
And I asked him why he called. He said that he needed money. And he was here in the Dominican Republic. He didn't come knock on my door because I think he knows what would have happened. But to make a long story short, I just ended up hanging up the phone on him.
Right.
My baby's mother asked me, hey, you were talking to your father. What did you do? I said, no, I hung up. Why you hang up the phone on your father? I said, because he's no good.
Right.
And I said a few things that is not worth mentioning now.
Can only imagine.